keep your circle tight.
Giggity!
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and at Yahoo Sports Australia. And you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today, 11 games on as we hurtle towards the All-Star break. I'm going to recap all of those, including a pretty significant injury, and then preview the two-game bullshit for Thursday. Michael Bolton.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it indeed. The first game that we take a look at, the Detroit Pistons go down to the Orlando Magic down in Orlando. The Crucifix Christian Wood was big, 26 and 12 in 38 minutes, 2 blocks, 64% shooting, an absolute monster performance from Woody, who is now a top 50 player over his last 6 games, really putting up the numbers. Thon McCare. 27 minutes for Thon. That's encouraging. Now, this game did go to overtime, so there is the extra playing time there. 18 points for Thon, but it did come on some pretty high-level shooting. He had only 2 rebounds. He had a steal and a block, and even in those last 6 games where his minutes have been pushing up, he's only just barely a top 200 player. So, no, I don't see him as a 12-team league ad. I look at him as a solid enough 16-teamer, but a guy, he's not pushing to 30 minutes most nights. He's like a 24-minute guy, and I don't think his per-minute production is enough to make him a 12-team league player. Derrick Rose returned. He played 17 minutes and he was 1 of 13 from the field. Again, this is one of those instances, unless the bloke's a top 20 player, a top 25 guy, when they return from an injury, I just keep them in the IR spot for just one more game. He was on a minutes restriction. He was also terrible. I don't really know how things are going to go for Rose now with Rose, Reggie Jackson, Svi Mykhailiuk, Bruce Brown, and then eventually Luke Kennard in that backcourt. Like, how the hell are all those minutes going to get distributed? Is someone going to sit out? Is Kennard going to play small forward? Is that going to mean no more Tony Snell and his 27 trillion type lines? There's a lot of questions that need to be answered with that Pistons backcourt. I'm still holding Rose, but let's see what happens. 36 minutes for Jackson, 12 points with 11 assists. The shooting was poor, but those assist numbers are strong. The poor shooting, the low steals, low volume of threes have always been the concern for me with Jackson, but he's alleviated some of those concerns so far. He probably is a 12-team league guy, but I still look at him as a sell high sort of a player. Tone Snell actually had 16 points with 5 assists. That's about a month's worth of action for him, while Markieff Morris had 14 and 8 with 4 triples and really did get the Pistons back into this game. The Shark, Bruce Brown, 10 boards, but with everyone starting to return to that backcourt, he doesn't have value. While Svi Mykhailiuk had 8 points in his return, and Sekou Doumbouya, 3 points in 14 minutes, not going to be any sort of value because he needs to concentrate more on, he needs to concentrate more on. The Orlando Magic, getting girls. The Orlando Magic, Aaron Gordo, 25, 9 and 9. A steal, a block, 3 triples, 43 minutes. This is a huge game from Gordo, who is back comfortably inside the top 70 over his last 6 contests. Now, he's been dreadful for most of this season, but he is on a hot streak at the moment. If he's getting assists like this, it's really interesting. He's an add, and let's see where this goes. While Vucevic had 19, 11 and 7 with 3 steals, and Kem Birch played the backup center role with Mo Bamba out. Fultz also was great, 22, 5 and 10 for Fultz. Terry Ross was also not great, 5 points, but he played 36 minutes. He got the shots up. Unfortunately, only 2 of those 12 went in, but that is always the situation with Ross. The shots are there at the moment while Augustin is out. We're getting that extra roll from Rossi, and some days they go in, and it's a big night, and some days they don't, and it's a poor night.
Sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit.
He is, over his last 6 games, the 117th ranked player, so there is some 12-team league value there, but by no means is he someone that you should be absolutely tying your hopes to, and I'm pretty sure we're all well aware of that. Let's move on. The next game we look at, the Atlanta Hawks and the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cavs get the really, really big win in this one. This was a pretty interesting game and lots for us to talk about here. The Cavs win 127-105. On the Hawks side, the Undertaker Dwayne Dedmon started, but got into early foul trouble and played only 18 minutes. 7 and 4 with 3 steals and 3 blocks. Now, those steals and blocks are obviously ridiculously good, but after the All-Star break, if Clint Capella is back, which I imagine, then where does Dedmon's value go? He probably is a drop despite this short-term stream value. Trae Young had 27 and 12, while the Baptist Johnny Collins had a triple-1 with 23 points. Still maintain that Collins is a bit of a sell high, although over his last 6 games, he is the 7th ranked player. Good game from DeAndre Hunter as well, who stepped up of late. 12 and 8 with 2 steals for Hunter. I like him more as a 14-team league guy than anything else. While Fanta Pants Kevin Huerter had 11 with 3 threes and 2 assists, and he is falling off a bit, and I'm not certain that he is a must-roster 12-team league guy. Strong game from Cam Reddish as well, who did have a bit of an injury scare but returned. 16 points in 26 minutes for Reddish. Now for the Cavs, where the real interest lies. Andre Drummond got in some real early foul trouble, had 14 and 15 in 22 minutes with 2 blocks, but didn't accumulate another foul at all for the rest of the game. But because Tristan Thompson came in early and played so well, they just stuck with Thompson. Now that's still a really good line from Drummond, but 27 and 11 from Thompson in 26 minutes on 69% shooting.
Giggity!
That's encouraging. I am not adding Thompson based on that, but it is interesting to see them stick with him over Drummo. And with Kevin Love out with Achilles soreness, which is something I mentioned yesterday, it's a real worry. 23 and 12 for Big Larry Nance, 2 triples, 3 steals, and 2 blocks. And his talent was never in question. It was the bullshit moves that the Cavs made at the trade deadline. Their reluctance to actually use Nance. Now, I don't know. The thing is here, with Love's Achilles soreness, if the All-Star break wasn't coming up, I would say, cool, we're going to get probably a week to 2 weeks worth of action out of Nance. But with the break coming up, does Love just rest up for the next week and a half and then he's right to go and Nance has no value? I think it's worth at least grabbing Larry and see what happens. Everyone will be thinking, this is a shutdown for Kevin Love. And you know that I absolutely detest that word. Kevin Love won't play if he gets injured. The NBA is just not going to let players sit out for the final 2 months of the season on a whim. If his Achilles is actually sore, and there is a real possibility of that, we know he's not the most robust in terms of his health, Love might sit out games. So it is worth grabbing Nance to see what happens, but I think that we might get the recovery from Love over the next 10 days, and then he just comes back after the break. Kevin Porter, 32 minutes. That's massively encouraging. 18 and 4 with 2 triples. I like him as a 12-teamer. Garland had 12 with 7 assists. He's a fringe 12 guy, while Sexton, the Padawan, had 23 with 6 assists on some inefficient shooting, but those 6 assists and those 9 attempts from the free throw line are really, really encouraging from Sexo, who has jumped into the top 50 over his last 6 games. Chetty Osman, a lot of minutes for him, mainly filling in some of that extra playing time with Kevin Love out playing some power forward. The next game up, we look at the Brooklyn Nets, the Toronto Raptors. The Nets break the Raptors' winning streak. They get the win 101-91. Serge Ibaka was back from his illness, 28 and 9 with 5 triples and 2 blocks. And as I detailed earlier on the Sell High podcast, Ibaka is a sell high because Marc Gasol is going to come back.
Oh, hi, Mark.
And he's going to drop down Ibaka's numbers. It's just going to happen, and Serge's value is going to drop pretty quickly. Lowry had 12, 11, and 12, a nice Ray Felton tribute there, while Van Vliet had 22 points and Siakam 16, 8, and 4. Pascal has not been as good as many people hoped, I think, this season. 35 over the course of the year, but 47th over his last 20 games. Has not quite lived up to the expectation, I don't believe. Hollis Jefferson, with Ibaka back, went back to the bench, 4 points in 16 minutes, while the Jedi, OG Anunoby,
Hello there.
4 points, 3 rebounds, 1 steal, 1 block. Again, not a must-roster 12-team league guy. He has these random offensive outburst games, and you go, shit, that's really good. And I still believe in him long-term as an option, a fantasy option. It's just, to me, he's not a must-hold, must-roster player. While the Terrence Davis little love affair looks to be over, 1 point on 0 of 6 shooting. For the Nets, Karis LeVert, big, 20 and 7, 4 assists, 4 steals. Great usage, good minutes, good shooting, which are things we haven't been able to rely upon from LeVert. I would be trying to sell as high as possible because he is playing well, and then Kyrie is going to come back and the usage is going to drop off because his usage has been sky high since Irving has been out. Smoke and Joe Harris dropped in 19 points, while Jarrett Allen was productive, but still only 20 minutes, while DeAndre Jordan plays 23. 10 and 13 for Allen. Jordan had 7 and 10. The numbers are still okay there for Allen, but I reckon in a 10-teamer, you can consider him someone to move on from. While the artist formerly known as Torian Prince, 8 points on 20% shooting, and he just always seems to hang around the 120 to 150 rank mark, which in a 12-team league, if you can't push any higher than that, then you're no good to me. You're fine as a streamer, but you're not someone that's worth holding under every circumstance, and he's an absolutely piss-poor 262nd over the last 6 games. Let's move on now to have a look at the next game. It is the Milwaukee Bucks, and they go down to the Indiana Pacers in their last game before the break, 118-111. There was no Giannis Antetokounmpo, there was no George Hill, and there was no Kyle Korver. Brook Lopez had 12 and 4. He had 3 steals and 4 blocks, while Dante DiVincenzo, the big ragu, 19 and 8 in 30 minutes for DiVincenzo. You know I like DiVincenzo, but his value really is just tied to the steals. Occasionally he'll have these good games. I don't really see him as a must-roster guy, despite a rank of 112th this season. Middleton had 17, 5 and 5, while Bledsoe had 15, 6 and 4, while Sterling Brown, 2 good games in a row for Sterlo with Yanni out. 14 and 8, but he's not a regular part of the rotation. We got 20 minutes out of Marvin Williams in his first game for the Bucks. I reckon that might be real trouble for Robin Lopez or Ersan Ilyasova moving forward. Williams isn't going to be a fantasy asset, but he looks like he's going to cut into these rotation minutes of some of these other players. Well, Ilyasova, just the 19 minutes in a start, 12 and 3 in those 19 minutes. For the Bucks, Tony Warren Jr. was huge. 35 points on 84% shooting. He also had 4 steals. Really, really good stuff. Now, of course, that shooting can't stick, but he has been that solid guy in that 70 to 90 range most of the season. I did think that Oladipo would cut into what he does. It hasn't really happened yet, so maybe I was wrong on that one. Brogdon, 17, 5, and 13. Good bounce back after last game, while Miles Turner actually outperformed Domantas Sabonis for once. 14 and 10 with 2 blocks and 2 threes, while Sabonis had 15 and 8 with some foul trouble limiting his playing time. Oladipo continues to struggle, 13, 3, and 4, but it wasn't because of the shooting, because he shot 71%. It's just low usage. I don't think he's ever getting back to that top 15 guy he was 2 years ago, and nobody should have that expectation. A lot of people ask me the question, like, what do we do with Oladipo so far this season? Well, at the moment, he's the 309th ranked player, which is objectively horrible. He will be better than that. I feel pretty good about that. I think you just have to hold through the break here. If he still looks shit for the first week after the All-Star break, it might be just one where you got to cut your losses and say, well, he's coming back off a serious leg injury, and he's just not going to be good enough for me to hold on to. But I think at this point, we still just have to hold on and hope that he can get things turned around pretty quickly. The Washington Wizards, they get the win over the Knicks, 114-96. Isaac Bonga. Now, I look at a lot of metrics, and I detailed this on my Patreon-only mailbag podcast that I did the other day. And Bonga was one of those guys that always came out high in a lot of the metrics that I use, and we've never really seen it. Well, today he played 14 minutes, had 13, 5, and 3, 3 threes, 2 steals, and 2 blocks, and then I went, like, that is why. If he can do that regularly, then that is an absolute monster of a fantasy player. He is a long, long, long way away from that. But to at least see a flash of what the metrics have really loved with him is encouraging. He did have a trip to the locker room and the minutes were down, but that's super encouraging from Bonga there. Troy Brown, 20 minutes, 11 points, 6 assists, and 2 steals. I need him to get 30 minutes a night to really rely upon him. He's more of a 16-team league guy. While Ish Smith and Shabazz Napier, they're doing a whole lot of nothing. 29 minutes for Smitty, 19 minutes for Shabazz. They didn't do anything. If you added Shabazz into 12, I feel good about moving on there. Smith is probably more of a 14-team leaguer. Well, your mate Rui Hachimura had 8 and 5 in 23 minutes, and you'll be stunned to know he didn't have another block after having 2 yesterday. I don't like him as a must-roster player. You're all well aware of my thoughts on him as a fantasy player. Much better points league guy than he is a category league guy. Well, we also got the composer in for 16 seconds, John Williams. So I think many people would forget that he was actually starting games for this team earlier on this season. Flaming Mo Wagner got ejected due to 2 technical fouls. He didn't do a huge amount, and the Tank Tom Bryant is likely back after the All-Star break, so I reckon you can feel okay about moving on from Wagner, while Davis Bertans had 16 points with 2 triples. A nice performance from him. Let's go on now to the Knicks. Yeah, that's the net one I want to look at. Lord Alfred Payton, 19, 4, and 8 with 5 steals. His steals are unbelievably through the roof. Detailed that earlier as well on the sell high. He was averaging like 3 steals per game. It's probably gone up now. I think he's a significant sell high, but that is strong. While Randall had 21 and 13. He also probably had 55 spin moves. While RJ Barrett, the best game from RJ since returning, 16 points. It did take 16 shots to get there with 5 rebounds, but no assists, no steals, no blocks, no threes. I wouldn't bother with him in a 12. Mitch Robinson.
And Mitch Robinson says, I'll take it from here.
If only. 18 minutes, 11 points, 8 rebounds, 1 block, and 5 fouls. So that's why his minutes were down. So I'm not going to crucify Mike Miller for the minutes distribution here because of the fouls. If this dickhead could just stay out of foul trouble, we'd get some big numbers. And for everyone, and I get this criticism all the time, man, just move on, he's shit, it's not going to happen. But he's still, despite all this nonsense, a top 90 player this season. So you're not dropping him anywhere. Look, it's frustrating that he's not doing more and he's not playing 28 minutes where he would be a top 50, top 40 guy. It's extremely frustrating. But you don't just drop a top 90 guy because he's not living up to your expectations. You just hold on. And that's the worst case scenario because I don't see how it really gets worse from here. Then you're all right. And then if it gets better, fantastic. It doesn't get worse from here. Mo Harkless, 25 minutes. I didn't even know he was going to be in the rotation. But with him in the rotation, the Duke Wayne Ellington lost playing time. Reggie Bullock lost playing time. The Fort Kevin Knox pretty much an afterthought here. Ntilikina only the 11 minutes. I suppose when you've got an aging veteran who offers nothing to a rebuilding team and you've got some young players, you've always got to go to that guy who's actually not part of the team or culture or future, and that's exactly what we got from Harkless here. While Punch Bob, you'd be stunned to know he got ejected. Bobby Portis threw the ball back to Shabazz Napier. The refs ejected him. I don't even care if it wasn't deserved. That's what happens when you have a shit reputation like Portis and you're smacking blokes like KCP in their head and you're punching your teammates in practice. If you do something that looks even marginally aggressive, you get no benefit of the doubt. So, see you later, Punch Bob, and see you later off any fantasy team, because he is not even a top 240 player so far this season. The next one, we look at the Charlotte Hornets, the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Hornets, 115, the Wolves, 108. There was no Terry Rozier. There was no Cody Zeller. So Malik Monk, 32 minutes, 25, 4 and 3, a steal, 2 blocks, 3 triples. We've seen this coming. He has been on a roll. He's the 88th ranked player over his last 6 games. I think he's worthy of a 12-team league ad. They're leaning into the young guys, and that was really strong. While Devontae Graham had 28, 4 and 8. I think you got to look at Jalen McDaniels. First man off the bench in this one. And yes, no Zeller, no Rozier. But his minutes, they're like 15, 16, 17 each of the last 3 games. 23 here. He was 4 of 4 from the field. He had 2 steals. Now, only looking at him as like a 20-team league guy, but you've at least got to look at him as a 20-team league guy, or even as an 18-team league guy at this point. Miles Bridges had 20 points after a rough start. He shot horribly, while Bismack Biyombo a double-double in a start in place of your mate Cody Zeller. Paul Washington Jr., wow, he has been rough. 2 points in 31 minutes, 9 rebounds, 1 of 8 from the field. A guy that I didn't particularly like heading into the draft. Played well at the beginning of the season, obviously, and a real sell-high moment after that opener against the Bulls. And since then, he's not been that good. The 139th ranked player over the course of the season, 189th in his last 20 games, 289th in his last 6. Like, that's nothing good. 10-team league, see you later. 12-team league. You got to consider him a move-on player, because when Cody Martin returns, will Washington go back to the bench? I'd have to think he does, because they'll push Miles Bridges up to the 4 and just get some run there for Martin. I don't really see the big upside in him, unfortunately. For the Wolves, the best thing to see here is the fact that Malik Beasley played 38 minutes and he scored 28 points alongside D'Angelo Russell. He had 5 threes, he had 6 rebounds and 3 assists, and he took 25 shots, more than D'Lo. That is fantastic news for Beasley moving forward. He is head and shoulders better than Okogie and Jarrett Culver, and he's going to stick in a strong role, and he's a must-roster player. Russell had 26, 6, and 11, while Jarrett Culver somehow is getting worse. 4 points in 16 minutes. You can feel pretty good about moving on from him. There was no Karl Anthony Towns with a wrist issue, which is obviously a concern. They said they'll reevaluate it across the break. We have no real understanding of what's wrong with it. But again, this is the absolute poster boy of a guy is an Iron Man until he gets injured. And making your draft decisions based on someone who didn't get hurt the year before is not a good way to do it. Maybe you use it as a tiebreaker, sure. But every season that you play without getting injured just means that you're closer to your next injury. And he's had multiple injuries this season. Those things don't happen. There's not someone who's just blessed with magic powers and they can't get hurt, or the other person's cursed with the ability to snap a leg at the drop of a hat. Shit just happens, and shit has happened to Towns this season. Will Karl Anthony Towns get shut down for the season? If he's hurt, he won't play. And that's how all of these things work. I don't think this wrist is... They're going to say, well, you got a sore wrist from whatever you were doing with said wrist, and you're not going to play again. I'm pretty sure he'll be back. But it's worth monitoring, because James Johnson, he made us proud. What a line. What a throwback from James Johnson. 5 points, but 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 3 steals, 3 blocks as a center. He still got it. And in 27 minutes a night, he's a 12-team league player. Now, I don't know if he gets there, but he's absolutely at least worth having a look at. Well, Naz Reid, the per-minute monster, 12 and 6 with a steal and a block for Naz in 22. Of course, when Towns comes back, he goes back to just being like a 15 or 16-minute-a-night guy. One show played a whopping 38 minutes. He's just not that good of a fantasy player. Now, 16 and 12 is fine. A 1-1 is fine, but those horrible percentages, I think he's a nice 14 to 16-team league guy, and not someone I'd really be bothering too much with in 12s. Well, Jarrett Culver, as I said, woof, 4 points in 16 minutes, and Alan Crabb, he had 11 minutes for 0 points. I don't think they need to be bothering too much with Alan Crabb, the blue swimmer. Let's look At the next game, it is the Portland Trailblazers and the Memphis Grizzlies. The Blazers go down 104-111, but of course, Damian Lillard hurt his groin at the end. Chris Haynes of Yahoo is reporting that it's a grade 1 or 2 strain. He's already ruled himself out of the All-Star game. A grade 2 groin strain can be up to 6 weeks. It could be 3 weeks. A grade 1 is like a 1 to 2 week. I think that Lillard might miss a couple of games at the back end of the All-Star break, which gives some value for Anthony Simons. Now, Simons had his best game by far, 22 points with 7 rebounds and 6 assists in 28 minutes, but he's a guy that scores and does absolutely nothing else most of the time. So I wouldn't say that he's an absolute 100% high priority ad because, again, Lillard might come back and not actually miss any time. Trevor Ariza, 2 steals and a block. That you got him for the steals, that's fine. He hit 2 threes, he had 12 points, no worries. While Christian James McCollum, 23, 3 and 5. He is about to go off if Lillard misses time. While Hassan Whiteside, 16 and 11 for Whiteside with no blocks. It definitely wasn't his best night. I think we can move on from Mallow. 5 points on 1 of 15 shooting. He did have 15 boards, but in a 10-team league, don't worry about it. There are plenty of other options there. And in 12-teamers, I reckon you could probably consider moving on there. Well, Gaz Trent, if you added him in a 12, I reckon the last 2 games should give you an indication that he was just useful as a streamer. 4 points in 16 minutes. Now, he would get a boost if Lillard misses time, but he's not someone I'm absolutely just holding close and caressing, waiting for that opportunity because, again, I think we'll just find different things open up over the All-Star break. For the Grizzlies, Brandon Clark, 27 and 6, 2 steals, 1 block. This is why I love him. This is why I had him number 3 on my Dynasty rookie ranks. Did I have him 3 or 4? I think I had him 4. He's definitely 3 at this point. Really strong stuff from Clarkie. He has waxed and waned a little bit this season, but he's still the 103rd ranked player in only 22 minutes. Give him 27. He's a top 50 guy. I think he can get to that level. I don't think he gets those minutes this season, but that's super encouraging. JV had 12 and 18, while Ja Morant 25 and 9, and Triple J just couldn't hit anything, but blocked 3 shots, had 8 points and 5 rebounds. Kyle Anderson, this is as Kyle Anderson as it gets. 6 points, a steal, a block, 9 rebounds. Fine, in a 14-team league, no worries. While the wave pool D'Anthony Melton, finally some shots went in. 12 points on 7 shots, 4 rebounds and 4 assists, but if you don't get steals, you got no value to us in 12-teamers. So, if you want to move on from Melton, I totally understand it. The 26 minutes is super encouraging, and usually if he'd played 26 minutes, he would get 2 steals and he would be a top 100 type of guy. It didn't happen here, but if you want to hold on, the encouraging thing is the shots went in and the minutes were there, but he is not for everybody. I think we're all well aware of that. Well, Dylan Brooks, look, I've been fairly critical of Dylan Brooks across his 3 years. He was shit to start this season as well. And then he had this 6-week stretch where he was really good. And I said, you know what? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the consistency's back. Well, maybe it's not, because the last week or so from him have been rough. In his last 6 games, he's ranked 319th. And for those of you that aren't keeping track of that at home, that's horrible. Is he just back to being that shit bloke who doesn't do anything apart from score and chucks up a bunch of long twos, and when they don't go in, he's garbage? Maybe. Is he a droppable player? Well, as the 135th ranked player over the course of the season, your insight will tell you probably yes. In a 10-team league, definitely. I get the feeling maybe that was just like a 6-week hot streak. He got an extension out of it and then he's dropped off completely back to what he's been pretty much his entire career. That is absolutely a concern in my opinion. Let's go on to the next one. It is the Sacramento Kings getting their asses kicked by the Dallas Mavericks, 130-111. Both of these teams, the sneaky bastards, they made little changes to their starting lineup right before tip-off. Both of them announced lineups, and then 2 minutes to go, they changed it up. The Kings, they went small, pushing Nemanja Bjelica to center, Harry Giles to the bench, and Corey Joseph, of all people, into the starting lineup. When you've got one aggravated and aggrieved Bud Hield, why wouldn't you start him? Anyway, didn't matter because Bjelica got into foul trouble immediately. Hield played 31 minutes and had 22 points and also had 9 assists. Shot poorly, and he'd been shooting really well. I've been saying all year, I think Hield is pissed in Sacramento. A lot of people tend to debate that. Reports keep coming out that he's pissed, but that was still good from him. Well, Joseph had 9, 3, and 4, and Bazemore had 15 and 7. So really, it was a night for players who aren't good to put up numbers. Fox had 16 there, while the pencil, Harrison Barnesy. There he is. 6 points in 29 minutes for Barnesy, a 0-0, 7 rebounds and 4 assists. Back to the old nonsense from Harrison. And yeah, don't fool yourself. Don't add him in 12-team leagues, and that's why. 11 and 5 for Giles in 21 minutes, while Bogdan Bogdanovic, he's pretty close to getting one of these. In fact, he's going to get one.
Sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit.
Yeah, that was rough. 6 points on 2 of 11 shooting with 4 rebounds and 2 assists. In a 12, he's a soft hold. In a 10, I wouldn't worry about it. And we're still, waiting on the return of guys like Bagley and Len and Holmes. Jabari Parker should return after the All-Star break. I don't see him starting over Bjelica. Maybe they start Bjelica at center and Parker at the 4. I think people are just so infatuated with Jabari Parker and they just think he's good. I don't think he's that good. He might get a 21-minute-a-night role, but that's not going to be enough for me to be a 12-team league player. On to the Mavericks. Luka Doncic was back.
Yeah!
33, 12, and 8. Great percentages. Awesome. And the most awesome thing is Kristaps Porzingis put up the big numbers next to him. 27 and 13 for KP, 5 assists and 3 blocks. Awesome. They also were playing funny buggers with their starting lineup. We had the announcement that Courtney Lee was starting. Cool. I don't know why. And then just before tip-off, mate, Jalen Brunson's back in there. Well, the burner played 14 minutes and obviously didn't trouble the scorers too much, while Courtney Lee didn't play at all. That tricky Rick Carlisle. Timmy Hardaway dropped in 19 points with 6 assists, while Seth Curry had 18 points with 6 assists. Both of these guys are 12-team league points and threes type streamers. Delon Wright didn't do too much. You can drop Maxi Kleber, who had 6 points in 18 minutes, and Justin Jackson had 4 points in 20, but his minutes almost assuredly are going to go towards Michael Kidd-Gilchrist so that he can go out there and have 4 points and 1 rebound in 20 minutes. Actually, Justin Jackson would be proud to get those numbers. All right, on to the next game, the Miami Heat and the Utah Jazz. The Jazz win at 116-101. The Heat started again with Bam Adebayo at center. Only the 9 points, but 11 boards, 5 assists, 4 steals, and 2 blocks for Adebayo was strong. While the Spur Dunk Robinson, all he does is bang in threes, another 6 of them there, 18 points. He does nothing else. Actually, the scoring was really good there from Robinson. He's the 132nd ranked player this season, meaning if you look at just those numbers, he's not a must-roster guy, but that value in the threes, along if you count three-point percentage, it makes him invaluable. But if you don't need those numbers, then he is pretty close to useless. Jay Crowder wasn't able to continue the ridiculous form, but still the shooting is sky high, 75% on his threes, 15 points in 25 minutes with 3 threes for Crowder. He's a 14-team league guy, while Jim Butler had 25 and 8 and Iguodala 9 and 5. Kendrick Nunn, a little bit better, 12 and 2. He did have 2 steals and a block, but the shooting is still horrendous, and I just don't see him being a must-roster 12-teamer, while the Iron Shoulder had 13, 3 and 5, and Olynyk, unsurprisingly, could not back up his almost triple-double. 0 points, 2 rebounds, 0 assists in 11 minutes. Derek Jones, again, did absolutely nothing, and he is just a defensive streamer. 2 steals and a block, but no points, even though he is starting. For the Jazz, Rudy Gobert.
Rudy Gobert.
16 and 20 for Gobert with 2 blocks, really good percentages. Yeah, hit both his free throws, strong game. While the Donovan Mitchell was also really good.
He's good.
26, 5 and 4 for Mitchell, and Clarkson's run continued. 21 points, 4 triples, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists. In 25 minutes, no Mike Conley, and shot 67%. He's absolutely fine as a 12-team streamer. I just don't see it lasting long-term. Ingles is a drop, 4, 2, and 9, unless you need assists. He was also 1 of 9 shooting, so it could have been better. But when Conley returns, he just doesn't have that same juice that he has most of the time. One Bojan Bogdanovic, 22, 7, and 4. A pretty standard Bogdanovic type of performance. Let's go on to the Golden State Warriors and the Phoenix Suns. The Suns get the win 112-106. Golden State changed their starting lineup. The lubricant Kai Bowman was out. You can drop his ass everywhere. They started Jordan Poole. I've been talking about Poole as a sneaky guy for a while. 12 points, 2 triples, 3 assists, and a steal. He's not a 12-team ad, but he's in that 14-team league discussion, I believe, and he's worth at least having a look at. Well, Jeremy Pargo got the backup point guard minutes. 15 in 21 minutes for Pargo with 3 threes. That's still just a very deep league scenario. Marquise Chris, you all know he's a must-roster. 18 and 12 with 3 blocks. While Andy Wiggins, what is this? 27 points, 3 triples, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, 4 blocks. Has he ever had a better game? I'd almost argue no. 64% from the field, 6 of 6 from the line. Maybe a good team makes you better. And by a team, I mean organization, because obviously the Warriors are trash. That's really encouraging from Wiggo. Damo Lee was pretty strong, 10 points, but 3 assists and 3 steals gets it done. He's a back-end 12-teamer, while the triangle Eric Pascal, I wouldn't worry about him in 12-team leagues. 12 and 6 in 27 minutes for Pascal, who now is the 202nd ranked player over the course of the season. For the Suns, Booker 27, 5 and 8. And Check Diallo started again with DeAndre Ayton out. Only the 22 minutes here for Diallo as Jonah Bolden played more than him. Now, Bolden's a guy that I liked as a rookie, and he sort of got lost in the shuffle in Philadelphia. 6 and 7 for Jonah, 1 steal and 2 blocks. He's shown an ability to contribute right across the box score. Now, of course, there's no Šarić, Ayton, Baines, or Kaminsky, so he's a long way down. And with the All-Star break coming, those guys are probably going to return to action. But he's at least a name worth looking at. McCall Bridges, 14 points, 2 triples, 3 steals, and a block. Turns out that he is good, and those numbers are strong, and he's bringing offense now. He should be rostered in every league, while Ricky Rubio had 9, 5, and 9. And Oubre struggled, even though he was back in the starting lineup. 15 points on 16 shots, no assists, no steals, no blocks. It's a bit of a buy low moment. That's the right word. Moment here for Oubre, who has slid a little bit in his recent level of production, while Cam Johnson is a deeper league 3-point streamer, a poor man's Duncan Robinson, if you will. 3 triples for 9 points in his 18 minutes of action. Then we go on to the last game of the night. An overtime game between the Denver Nuggets and the LA Lakers. The Lakers win in the end in Denver on the road, 121-16. A pretty good game and a good win for the Lakers. Anthony Davis had 33 and 10 with 2 steals and 2 blocks, while LeBron had 32, 12 and 14. LeBron James. Not much else really happening there. It was a good game from Alex Caruso, 10, 6 and 4 with a 1-1. And then Dwight Howard, also really strong. 30 minutes for Dwight, 14 and 11. He obviously struggles from the free throw line, but the rebounds, the field goal percentage, that can be of use. It's not for everybody. He's not a must-roster guy, and he's still rostered in far too many leagues. But the minutes have gone back up the last couple. Avery Bradley, 10 points in the 31 there, while Rondo, who had a good game last time out, had 2 points in 14 minutes and was outplayed by Alex Caruso. For the Nuggets, who are still without Will Barton, Michael Porter, and Mason Plumlee. Big Chungus Nikola Jokic. He did get beaten by Anthony Davis in this game, but the numbers were still pretty good. 22, 11, and 6 with 3 steals. While the Blue Arrow, he was on my Sell High podcast today, and nothing changes there. He's still a Sell High because these numbers are great. 32, 3, and 10 on 52% shooting. Those assists are way up. The shooting numbers are way up. There's just no way that's going to stick. We also got 38 minutes out of Jeremy Grant, who had 15 and 7. But I just don't see... Again, the overtime game helped him. If you need that roster spot, which you probably don't at this point, but if you do, I think he is a drop. Millsap had 10, 4, and 4 with 2 steals. That's more in line with what he does, putting him as more of a 14-team league guy or a back-end 12, not a must-roster 12 and not a 10-team league player. Torrey Craig, 5 points in his 30 minutes, while Gary Harris had 13 with not much else. And I think that's just pretty much where Gary is at this point in his career. Geordie McRae, just the 8 minutes, but he's going to move out of the rotation, as is PJ Dozier, when Barton, Porter, and Plumlee eventually return to action, which will likely be after the All-Star break. Let's have a look now at some injury news. Kevon Looney was out again with that hip injury. That only further strengthens Marquise Chris's value, who had another big game today, while Kevin Love, I mentioned already, the sore Achilles. That's obviously a worry, so Nance is a guy that we look to grab. Karl Anthony Towns missed with a wrist injury, and Terry Rozier missed with a knee problem, while Damian Lillard looks to be a grade 1 or 2 groin strain. He thinks he'll be back the first game after the All-Star break. I would be absolutely stunned if he is back in that game, which is, again, 8 days away. I really don't think that would be the best idea to have Lillard back there. You could look for a stream of Simons or maybe Trent, but I think they're going to be back-end guys, even if Lillard does miss those games after the All-Star break. Let's move in now and have a look at some DFS for the games for Thursday. There is only the 2 of them. We're looking at them from a FanDuel pricing perspective. All right, let's look now at the DFS action for Thursday. Only the 2 games on. A terrible day for DFS. Last games before the All-Star break, only a 2-game slate. If you're going to avoid this, please avoid it at any cost. The first game, the Clippers against the Celtics. The Celtics 1.5-point favorites at home here. Jaylen Brown is probable after hurting his calf at the end of the Rockets game. At point guard, you've got Kemba, who's at 7,000, who really is struggling at the moment. It is a good matchup with Patrick Beverley out for the Clippers, so I think Kemba looks to be a GPP sort of a guy. Landry Shamet at 4,300, played 36 minutes last game, only 20 FanDuel points. He is not a good fantasy point per minute type of a player, while Brady Wanamaker is not going to move the needle. Marcus Smart's at 4,900. I think there is value in Smart at such a low price, while Lou Williams at 5,600 is also super low. I like Williams more than I like Smart at their respective salaries. And then onto your small forwards, you got Jaylen Brown's at 5,700. I also like Brown at that salary. Paul George is at 83. Good price for Georgie. Marcus Morris, I'd avoid at 51. Gordon Hayward at 68 also looks pretty strong given the way that he has been playing recently. For your power forwards, you've got Vanilla Tice at 5,200, a strong cash option in a really positive matchup for him. And then you got the fun guy, Kawhi Leonard.
I'm a fun guy.
He's at 9,900. I think that looks pretty good as well on a limited slate. Well, Tatum at 8,800. I'd probably go the 99 for Kawhi, but Tatum at that price still looks pretty good. At center, I don't want anything to do with Harold and Zubats. Harold's numbers have been dropping way off, while Enes Kanter had 1 point against the Rockets. So yeah, hard to see him as being someone that I'd want to invest too heavily in. Next up, the Oklahoma City Thunder and the New Orleans Pelicans. The Pelicans are favored in this game by a couple of points. The spread, Brandon Ingram is questionable after missing the last couple of games with that ankle injury. Lonzo's at 6,600. I think he's got a really strong floor. Now, the matchup's a bit of a negative here, but he's giving us 30 plus almost every night. And Chris Paul's at 78. He's giving us 40 almost every night as well. So I like both of those point guards here. A lot of shooting guard eligible players. Gilgeous-Alexander's at 7,400. I'd pass on that. Drew Holiday at 8,000. Probably a little bit too high after a $600 price rise. While Josh the Hitman Hart at 5,000 would be really, really good if we do hear that Ingram happens to be out. And Schroeder's at 64. I don't really love that one. For your small forwards, the Italian cock, Danilo Gallinari.
Hands up, my cock!
He's at 6,100. You feel like he's going to get 30 every night. That's a really good cash play with some upside. While Ingram's at 84 with his bum ankle. I don't think I'd want to get too invested there. At power forward, Zion's at 77. He dropped 50 against the Blazers. A little bit of a different matchup here, of course, against the Thunder. But at 77, there is value in Zion quite a bit. Favors is tough to use, same as Noel. While Nicolo Melli at $4,000. He's giving us 24 a night over the last 3, which is really good value at that salary. I wouldn't feel super confident about Nicolo there, but there is at least something to mention. And then at center, Steve Adams is at 53. Low upside, but really solid floor value, I think, averaging 26 over the last 5 at that low salary. And he had a nice 36-pointer last game with Noel in some early foul trouble. If we have a look on DraftKings to see how things shape up over there, Gallinari, Gilgeous-Alexander's much better there, Zion, Drew Holiday, Schroeder's a better option on DraftKings as well. I like Paul, I like Jalen, the hi-fi.
JB, you've done it again.
Paulie George, Kawhi Leonard, and Jace Tatum looks okay over on DraftKings as well. That'll do it for me, guys, as we take a break now, heading into the All-Star break. There is still going to be some podcasts, but not our usual style of shows, of course, because there's no games to recap. But there will still be some stuff heading over the All-Star break. If you've got any ideas or suggestions of what sort of shows you want me to release, please let me know either down in the comments below or tweet them at me at redrock_bball. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. PJ Washington.